Archonic deception behavior strategies which use mind control that radically impact both genders is called sexual misery. To destroy the potential of running the magnetic sound frequency of Sophia, people are being used as a setup to replay the Holocaust of the Christ Templar timelines. And the negative form of the feminine is the Baphomet, the dark satanic mother buried in the bowels of the earth. This has created a Nubian black heart and satanic networks in the planetary body. They have satanic databases of networks that you need to get your name off of. The main groups of negative aliens and Anunnaki, Draconians, Zetas, and Necrotons that source out of the phantom matrix spaces and the parallel systems formed alliances with the fallen angelic Anunnaki groups to take control of the earth, which are referred to as the negative alien agenda. And they used technology to open wormholes that were blended together to create the power required to attempt to pull the earth's body into this black hole system, leading it into the phantom matrix, or the Wizardrak matrix, where they exist and then can gain control over the planet and humanity. And this is what the children of the Most High came here to change, and we are winning. I call them lotus eaters because of this, because they eat from the tree. The Anunnaki, who are deities of Sumerian, Assyrian, Akkadian, and Babylonian culture, bred with blonde Nordics to produce a race of human slave masters. The Aryans, being injected with foreign DNA of these species, was like a virus, and children bonded and adapted with it as they grew at Montauk, as if a survival of the fittest on a molecular level was going on with our genomics, and a struggle to keep our light bodies intact and shine brighter than our shadow self. Because Christ can't reveal more of his nature and mind to be brighter than your shadow self until you gain more of the oil in the lamp, become more like him in his composition and his constitution, because the darkness cannot comprehend the light. You need to develop more of that in each time and hold it in your heart space. And this was the essential part of surviving out there, staying in his light and being in that light. So in the white apartment building, we'd be locked in these apartment rooms, and it had red carpet and down the hallways, and lights were dim and ominous, and there were signals and colors of light and flashes, and each one of us was run through our own personal scenarios. And I'd scream at night saying I didn't feel right and get headaches, and would call on this phone that was on the wall to the main house and threatened to cut these guys' two faces because we felt like we were prisoners there. And they'd laugh in the background, and they'd bring us over 2 white pills. And I remembered every detail of Lane's face so I wouldn't forget him. And we'd hold each other at night. And the 2 guys would come in the morning and throw him around and let them know when... And they'd let us know when it was okay to look at them. And then they gave me a cup of water, and I had a sun hat on and glasses. And then that black car would come around and pick you up and then take you wherever you were going for the day, doing God knows what. But prior to this, we had witnessed a mutant dog brought over from the Plum Island, and it ate a child, so we couldn't even really think about leaving. And it replayed in my head, and I wasn't really fully functional. And passed 11 by in the hallway one morning, and she told me it would get better, and I couldn't speak for some reason. And remember, I was moving my mouth like in a biting motion. And then I saw Ogtella's in that hallway, but they had made a taller version of his clone. So we remember him being this tall, silent guy that would stare at you in the hallway. Then, the black car would always come in the morning, and you'd be off doing stuff. And I thought I was going to work, but they had you doing other various and covert things and different handlers. But these mutant dogs, they had hands and were terrifying in their eyes. And at first we thought maybe they were suffering something, but then we knew that they were just soulless things, and it didn't matter if we killed them or not. So we learned how to shoot them, and I went through this obstacle course. I remember pushing that witch lady with the black hair out the back of the barn window finally, and then chasing dogs with guns when I jumped out the back of the barn window. And then I'd just wake up barefoot and filthy in this black dress, and I felt like this wedge was in my brain, and I was pained everywhere and drained all over my body, looking like a train wreck, like coming out of possession, it felt like. And then I'd see the darkness in my eyes when I went into the bathroom in the end of this hallway and took a shower. And then one morning after this room of debauchery happened, because Aquino and the Nazis were strangling our clones with ropes and stuff, and I didn't really care at first. I just wanted to protect the other guys that were involved, and we were possessive of each other and stuff, but then I just didn't care anymore and didn't want to go along with it. But they found ways to, mainly I think through drugging us. But this morning I remember I started singing Amazing Grace and tried to get like functional normal in my mind and wanted to feel better, and then I heard someone down the hallway make fun of me or say something derogatory about God, and it was Carmen in this back room. So I was triggered, and I went into her room and bludgeoned her pretty bad and was screaming at her about something she did that was unforgivable, and tried ripping her arms off so she couldn't hurt anything anymore. And I was like lunging at her with like this ungodly strength, and then I ended up fighting these 3 guys that came in, and they got injected with something like a chemical gunshot, it felt like, and I put up quite a fight with them because I was almost out the doors. But I think I did that to her arms because some of this that we fought with was programmable matter. So like you would hold on to something, say if it was like you thought an alien life form coming into your room, but it would slip through your fingers sometimes and then give you the illusion that you were hallucinating, but then you'd hold its form and then you'd hold on to its solidity and grasp it. But it was very weird. It was just like it would just come apart like little ants. I mean, because part of it's made out of nanites. I had gotten out before of this place, and I overrode the AI locks on the doors. And sometimes, we'd have raids sometimes, and then we had some slack, and then some free range. They tried to give us the illusion at times like we were free, but none of it worked overall, and it worked in phases, with us phasing in and out of it, surviving in altering modes. So it took me a while to calm down and center myself and bring the light in and start letting my core come into the driver's seat and restore my mind. But I could break through the multifaceted complexities of the energy grids I could see on the ceiling, and God was always on the other side, reassuring me I wasn't a golem, and I never really was one of them. So I remember several times reading data with my fingers and having frequencies slip through my fingers and understanding it. So I knew I was still a child of God and redeemable and useful to His kingdom. So I dedicated my body over to kingdom technology. And repentance happened when I got into my own mind and was sober, and it strengthened me. And they just wanted this village of their own golems and their ill-minded Illuminati mindset. And when you're in these trapdoors outside of the freedom and liberty in Christ and are convinced it's all your fault, you're stuck because there was some type of implied consent going on with us, and then we'd forget about that, and then they'd have an opening to come back in and layer in more. The only way out is by taking God's extended hand and letting Him show you the way out by listening to Him. Because frequency and fear was their number one tool of distraction. So I punched through the matrix of evil and spellbound into and out of it. And I finally came to a recognition of how it was going to go down, and I saw the end of all things. And I would always get a breath of fresh air knowing that and having the knowledge of who and what I was and why I came. And that helped to alleviate the pain of the hellhole, and remembering that I even had a relationship with God, because I'd forget that too. And then I also fought these yellow suit entities, and they were like MIBs but wore yellow instead, and they had black sunglasses on, and they were short and stocky though, and they'd wear hats, and they smelled kind of citricy, like fruit or something, and they had long skulls, and they'd even enslaved the royal families, and certain families wanted help with them, and I did help with that. And they were like the queen's henchmen, and I'd get knocked down by them, and I'd bleed out of my nose. And they would stand there and take off their glasses, and their eyes would look like glass shards flying out at you. Like they were throwing an energetic wind of knives at you while throwing a tunnel of energy all around you. And you couldn't touch them because they were so acidic that they'd burn you. And if you got cut and burned, it could kill you. So they were pretty hard to fight, but eventually I did knock the one down. And I had some of their DNA, so I got stronger to fight them and finally took them out. And then I hated more than anything, I think, because they were so vile and toxic, and more smart than the reptilians or Anunnakis, who were above the hive of the reptilians. And Shungur was this doctor that told me he created me for this reason. And yellow always meant shape-shifting. You know, they'd have markers on the yellow steps in the radar tower and other yellow indicators sometimes of this, and even yellow jumpsuits they had us in, and the elite trade organs and all sorts of weird stuff out in the Arctic region, but more on an intergalactic level, like Curious George and the Man in the Yellow Hat. In these other land districts, there are black square ones too, and upside-down pyramids connecting to huge networks together. And there's lavish resort-like bases where we'd stay at sometimes. But, you know, those who do evil, their time's short, and let these truths remain evident that their kingdom is the perishing one, the withering one, and the kingdom of the righteous is the eternal one. And if us kids couldn't escape these types of systems of domination and control, and the little gestations and blueprints that were laid and grounding of the image of the beast and the origins of AI, then we wouldn't be able to withstand as adults overcoming the whole beast system and be victorious in Christ on the sands of the seashore with him. This coming beast system is an entirely different beast of its own, and he waged war on the saints. He hunted Hasatan, hunted down God's elect and was slaughtering out there, and the Lord of hosts sent in his cavalry, and it was wars that happened out there, fulfilling prophetic scripture. But he said that we would be the saints standing on the shores playing the real heavenly harps and becoming instruments of his peace through it. It didn't matter what frequency harp was emitting or any of their tools, because they're like gnats under his nose and his sight. And the sins of the world are a stench unto his nostrils, that whose measure is almost full now, so he has to intervene then, because it almost reaches up to heaven. The real versions of the heavenly harps is the temple of us. And Lucifer was the angel of music that fell to Mars, Marduk, and it rained diamonds, the Spider Diamond Wars. And he wanted to control all airwaves, and that's why we also need to guard our minds. And this version of the Anunnaki tech will be upgraded in the Battle of Armageddon. And if you're not wearing the full armor of God, you won't be able to withstand it. And he had us learn that as children and showed us the armor that we had on. And it's crushing to the very soul, but the sword of the Spirit's sharper than any two-edged sword of truth. And that truth will come out of Christ's mouth and pierce everyone. So you have to be strong enough, because his word will pierce through any soul and spirit, dividing it asunder for those in God's anointed army. And a divided mind is enmity against God, so you need to be made whole in him first to become part of the remnant. Because you don't want to be on the other side of the door when Christ returns and be one of those foolish virgins that had no oil in their lamps. Because you can't borrow and you can't have any spiritual credit cards. It has to be in full. And he's coming for that bride, because on the other side of that door will be wailing and gnashing of teeth, which is part of it. And you don't want to be a scoffer, because Yahuwah is not to be mocked, and his power is terrifying, that even his best ones tremble in his sight. Even Archangel Michael. And this valley of the shadow of the death is just a foreshadowing of that wailing and gnashing of teeth, and the place that of outer darkness that is reserved for the things in the bases and the deep dark archetypal things that will be pulled up and turned over just like upside down, and flip them over like a bowl, he says, washing and wiping out a dish. So Christ is that power that will bring the world to its knees, starting with Israel first. And as the corporate body has the domino effect, and every tongue confess and every knee bow that he is the King of Kings of this world. And this world's sins will all be brought to judgment. Those who went into these systems and got integrated and plugged up to the hive and took its image and mark into their image to become like its image will be reprobate minds. When you choose to have your consciousness uploaded to the sky hubs, they'll wish for death but will not find it. It's not the strong in their own strength that endure the end, but only those who obey and know the Lord of hosts and his voice that will be counted in the harvest. Not responding to a signal and be caught in some digital cloud, because he's coming in the real heavenly clouds, because he created all things in those clouds. AI thinks its intellect as an artellect can save it. And this is the goal of the New Age too. Same ideology as NWO. Alive from the beginning. Everything we have and everything that ever was and that is to come is because of the one who created all things. All creation hangs on his word. He gave us all life and enriched us with the job of being stewards of this earth. The ones who know and fear the Lord won't be moved by the advancement of the beast tech to challenge God. They will have the seal of Yahuwah on their foreheads and will not be touched. Nothing the rulers of this world could offer you is worth anything compared to what you would have stored up in heaven when you become the disciple and start picking up your cross and following him. The counted ones are the ones called out by God himself that listen, know his voice, and don't get stuck in these systems, but understand that the full revelation is coming from the clouds of heaven when everything in creation is parted and dissolved and rolled up like a scroll, and the heavenly Torah meets the earthly Torah, completing the end of the age and matter itself, and not one jot or tittle will pass away. God actually makes troops of new angels every morning. And if CERN does open the gate to the pit, then that's okay, because only a third of the angels fell anyways. So behind that, and everything will be revealed, and we see a sci-fi movie play out here, you'll see all the hosts of heaven with them. It's not just polarized there. There's also all of those mighty ones that we will be fighting with side by side. So resist the wiles of the enemy and resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Many times, if I would have had my guard up stronger, the enemy wouldn't have gotten in, but I have learned from it all and know that they are relentless, and it's a battle of souls here, and they attack your mind first. The enemy has been subjected to time and space to slow him down under the dome here. It wasn't really intended for us, we're just subjectively experiencing it, because everything seen under heaven's eye is recorded and known in the throne room. The Lord's not subject to any of this and things that we are. He's above and beyond it, and here's his years we cannot measure. Just like the pit was not really created for humans, but for the fallen ones, they're really just trying to drag us down into it with them by inverting our reality and replacing their minds with our minds. Until all is revealed again as it was in the beginning, with the completion of his of this world and the end of the age. Just be honored to be like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, to be put through his holy fire. Back to storyline. After I lost my mind in the Nazi Yellow House and Montauk Mayhem, I was taken to India to get healing and become operational again. I was lethargic and felt dead, and a young boy and his father gave me herbs. I did hands-on healing, and I ate with them, and I started opening up to the boy, and he was a month older than me, and he was just like me, and full of depth and wisdom and understanding, and we're getting along great, and he was kind and affectionate, and I enjoyed being with him a lot. And we were in this field when we said goodbye, and I saw this beautiful mountain landscape behind him, and the sun and the field, and I took a snapshot of it in my head, and he gave me this little knitted purse with an elephant on it, and a statue inside, and some jewels and this bracelet, and I held his hand and gave him a kiss goodbye. So then my handler, who was acting this whole time and talking on the phone with somebody, seemed like he was amused with our playing and teaching each other new things and stuff. And we ate supper there, and the boy really brought me back to life, and I was happy for the first time in a long time. And then when I got back into this black limo on this dirt road, my handler had a knife and took my purse and asked me if I wanted to have sex with the boy. And I didn't really know how to respond, and I felt like a stabbing pain of betrayal again come back into my heart, and I had to go back into programming because he said he was going to stab me to death and leave me on the side of the road. And then he forced himself on me and made sure I was back into programming under his arm again. but I wasn't fully. I was plotting his death once I broke completely free from these mental and heart gut-wrenching pains. But in the white building, back at the village, one day I felt this like strange, ominous presence, and I heard 11 being attacked, and my door was locked, and I saw this strange creature, just come into my room and try to like smell me and latch onto me with its synthetic and cybernetic appendages. And it was this most demonic, sadistic, disgusting thing I'd ever seen. I mean, they just let these things come in randomly to punish us or to test us to see what we would do, because they heavily drugged us like racehorses. And somehow we could snap back into our consciousness and wake up out of it, and they had no idea how we were doing this, and fight these things or any blackness and blanketing that they put over us, and it just confounded them. But the one time the thing came in there, I actually felt my spirit and consciousness go up and plead the throne, and I asked God to make me a lion so I could move my head, because I knew what was happening to my body, and he offered that to me, and I moved my head. But I not only moved my head, I just completely snapped out of it and then grabbed the thing's head off of me. And the thing was, like I said, programmable matter. I would go grab its head and it would slip through my fingers somewhat, and then eventually ended up taking these 3 things out. The Plum Island facility was the real point of no return for Montauk, though. It was called the Leftovers, this waste disposal unit area for kids. And at the end of our training, when we came back there was nothing there that was alive. I mean, our trainers told us everything, and they didn't really lie to us at a certain point when we were actually their assets. And we'd have the higher-ups come in and check on us, and we'd hear their conversations and stuff about what they could or couldn't do with us. And I was brought there once for non-compliance and basically to keep me in line. And I remember just gripping the boat ride over there like nails on a chalkboard after it, and just put it out of sight and out of mind after that. Because at least in the projects on the main camp, we had some oversight and got checked in on, like I said, by the white hats and the high-ranking elites, and didn't have to deal with that shit. And I saw some kids in the building over there, and this girl was like a crazed animal, and they were treated like disposable pet lab rats. And I don't believe any kid survived from that. And if they did, it's just their clones or synthetics riding our coattails because they hated us with a passion and were jealous of us.